Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Titan Law. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with Professor Fred Zindi, an education psychologist, a musician, an author, and a journalist. Enjoy this inspirational conversation. Professor Fred Zindi, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you very much, Trevor.
Well, we're sitting outside
Right.
in the garden and it's a bit windy, so hopefully that is not going to mess our conversation. When you said yes to the invitation, Fred, I was so excited
Thank you very much.
because your life, you've lived two lives, if not more than that. You are an education psychologist,
Right.
you are a musician,
That's right.
you are an author,
Right.
you are a journalist. You've lived a full life. And I said to myself, Zimbabwe and the world need to know more about this man. And the more I read into your profile took me back to the good old days.
Good old-
If there's anything like that, the good old days.
When the country was still a country.
You know? And I said to myself, this man is an academic, accomplished academic, accomplished author. You've written 7 books at least on music. You've written about 10 books in academia, in refereed, publications. And I asked myself at the end of the day, what drives Freddie to be so prolific in all that he does? Where does this energy come from?
By refusing to go to bed, to sleep.
Right.
Basically, that's what it's all about.
So you're not giving yourself enough sleep.
Not giving myself enough sleep. I was interviewed once by somebody saying to me, "What are your dreams for the future?" I said, "Dreams are for people who go to sleep."
Yeah.
If you don't sleep, then you don't dream.
Tell me, when you look at your life, do you consider yourself an educationist, a psychologist, a musician? What do you call yourself?
I consider myself all those aspects.
Right.
I play a role in each and every one of them, so I don't consider myself anything.
I must be honest, Fred. Reading your profile and bio, I was like, how does a man manage to pack in so much work and be so prolific and be so productive? But talk to me about your music. When did you first realize you had a passion for music?
From when I was born, actually, because my father used to be a drummer.
All right.
And he played in a band. So music was always in the house. And I grew up loving that kind of music. And when the Beatles, I don't even know if these young people know about the Beatles, it was a very prominent English group, came about. I listened to almost all their songs and wrote songbooks on them and knew every word they sang, although my English wasn't very good, but I knew every word they sang and understood what they were talking about. And I thought, this is the kind of life I'd like to follow.
Wow.
And then I teamed up with people like Jethro Shasha and a guy called Newton Kanengoni. We formed a band which we used to perform at school every Friday.
You were 10 years old.
I was 10 years old. That's right.
Yeah, talk to me about that experience.
School
What
assemblies.
was the group called? Was it the Dot? No, those are Falcons.
Those are the Falcons.
The Falcons in 1970.
That's right. And we actually used to play at assemblies, school assemblies, every Friday. And everybody at school attended. There were no dropouts on that particular day because they loved to hear this group that was coming up sing for them.
So who were the members of the Falcons, apart from yourself?
It was a guy called Mabin Mpili. He was from Zambia, but he was at the same school as us.
Yeah.
Jethro Shasha, Newton Kanengoni, and there was another guy called Lazarus Munetsi. And that was it, and myself.
What kind of music did you play?
We just did copyright music. Copied all
They're called covers, eh?
covers.
Yeah.
Yes. We copyrighted all the music from especially the Beatles. And we became popular to the extent that we used to get hired. We were in Mutare at the time by rural schools in Chipinge, Mount Selinda, Chikore School, and all those rural schools. They loved to hear from us.
And they paid you?
They paid us.
How much were you paid? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but I remember buying suits. We were the only boy band which wore suits.
Wow.
You know, I think it was $80 or $8 at the time, a week.
And then you formed the Dot.
The Dot.
And the Two Sounds.
That's right.
Who walked into that group with you?
The 2D Sounds were a creation of a man called Morton Malianga.
All right.
That's right. Fungai Malianga's
Fungai
brother.
Malianga's brother.
That's right. He actually brought equipment from the United States. He had just returned to Zimbabwe. And he started building his own amplifiers. He called them 2D Sounds amplifiers. And we adapted the name of the band from his creation. And it was Morton Malianga. Sorry, it was Quinton Malianga, not Morton Malianga.
Quinton, okay.
Quinton Malianga, the younger brother, who actually played bass in the band. And Fungai Malianga became this vocalist. And they incorporated us from the Falcons. Me, Mabin Pili, Jethro Shasha, and Newton Kanengoni.
Jethro Shasha, what a talented human being.
He was very great. He was good. You know.
And what were you still doing covers then, or you were now composing your own music?
We started doing compositions which were very limited, but based on American soul music, because Quinton had just come from the United States.
Right.
But again, it was a different direction. It was more like black soul music that we started creating. And we used to cover James Brown, Otis Redding, Arthur Conley, and stuff like that.
And then you had to travel to London.
That's right.
To study mathematics.
That's right.
And then when you got to London, you formed another group again, Stars of Liberty. Talk to me about that experience and who joined you there.
It was now during the revolution, the Zimbabwean revolution, and we became politically conscious. And we decided to call ourselves the Stars of Liberty. We were making songs that we hoped people would listen to and create freedom in Zimbabwe. And it was Fungai Malianga, myself. We didn't have enough Zimbabweans at the time. So we incorporated guys from the West Indies. There was Roy McLean, who used to be the drummer of the band. He played with a band called Desmond Dekker. I don't know if you've heard of.
Yes, I remember Desmond Dekker.
He was Desmond Dekker's drummer, who left Jamaica and decided to come to London. And we saw him. He was looking for a group. He joined us. And we had two white guys in the band. One of them was called Nick Robinson. And we became the Stars of Liberty. That's right.
And were you not later joined by Louis Mhlanga and then you changed the name of the group?
To Shaka, yes.
To Shaka, yeah?
That's right. We later found out that there was another Zimbabwean in London who was also looking for some musicians to play with. And we discovered that his name was Louis Mhlanga and said, oh, wow.
What a man, what a talented musician.
And he replaced Fungai Malianga, who was playing the lead guitar. And we just asked Fungai to become the vocalist in the band. And Louis Mhlanga played the lead guitar. And I went on the bass.
And what's interesting for me is that you're already pursuing your studies as a mathematician.
That's right.
And but you decide that you're going to study how to read music.
Right.
Tell me about that decision and that journey.
It was actually Louis' influence. He was passionate about music. In fact, he lived with me in my flat, and he would get up at 6 in the morning, doing copyright of mostly American jazz artists, George Benson and stuff like that. And then he would finish rehearsing at 6 in the evening. 6 to 6 we used to call him, 12 hours a day. And I was going to college at the time. And then he said to me, does your college teach anybody to read and write music? I said, no, but I know a place in Piccadilly where the ABRSM, we call it, Associated Board of Royal School of Music, where they teach to read and write music. He says, why don't we go there? And I said, we can only go there in the evenings after my studies in the day. So we would go there from 5 to 7 every evening. I went up to grade 5 in guitar and piano, and he did the same thing. And we could read and write music and read to each other and write with each other, that kind of thing, for a while.
And meanwhile, you're doing your mathematics.
That's right.
Degree in mathematics.
That's right.
With which university?
The University of London.
University of London.
That's right.
And you're finding the time to do all the stuff.
I just squeezed it in.
And you did it very well, squeezed it in very well.
Squeezed it in, that was our life. We just lived for music at the time.
And mathematics.
And mathematics. And that was it. We went to London with a purpose. And the idea was to achieve that purpose.
Music and mathematics.
That's right. And music and mathematics, if you have read some scientific books, they are correlated.
I was going to ask you that. Talk to me about that correlation.
That's right. Those people who can read music and write music usually are also good at mathematics. So there's a correlation according to studies that were created at the time. To what extent that is true, I'm not sure. But there's a high correlation.
I'll tell you what, I think it's true because I don't have a head for maths. My wife bought me a guitar for my 40th.
That's right.
And she got me to do lessons. I can't play a thing up to now because I have no head for maths. I can't play the guitar. So this must be true.
I only know one other person who is mathematical and who's a musician in Zimbabwe, Dr. Gibson Mwandishona.
Yes.
And when I saw him, and we actually played with him, he came and joined Stars of Liberty for a while.
In London?
In London. And he said he was a mathematician. I wasn't surprised. Fungai Malianga is also
again.
Fungai Malianga is also a mathematician.
That's interesting.
That's right.
That's interesting.
That's right.
Then you went beyond just playing music. You also started managing musicians.
That's right.
You got involved with managing Aswad.
That's right.
Frontline Kids.
That's right.
Transit Crew.
That's right.
Why did you go that route?
Well, my management skills came by coincidence. I was social secretary at the University of London, the only black person who was in the executive of the Students' Union. I don't know if you've heard of Trevor Phillips.
Yes.
Yes, we were at the same college. And he said, I'm encouraging you because you got passion for music, encouraging you to be our entertainment secretary. So why don't you join in? It didn't take much to get voted in because Trevor Phillips is a black guy. He had more or less embraced me as one of his secretaries. So I was elected, and every year we used to have a caucus and conference for social secretaries throughout all London universities. And because of my passion for music, I decided I'll choose a black group to come and be the guest artists at this particular conference. I think it was in 1979, I think it was. And I invited Aswad, which were the leading reggae band in London.
Big group.
Big group.
Loved it
That's
myself.
right, yes. And I said to Brinsley Ford, because we were very close at the time, Brinsley Ford was the lead singer, and I said, would you like to come and play at this conference? So he says to me, is how much you paying us now? That was his first question. I said, well, I'll try and negotiate a good fee for you.
Yeah.
He says, we want to know that first. And I said, how about £1,000? He says, that would be reasonable. Everywhere we go, we play for about £500. So 1,000 would be very good. It won't be easy. It won't be difficult to persuade the boys. So they came and performed. And everybody there loved it. I man feel like bubbling, you know, and they loved it. So all the social secretaries of all these universities, Cambridge, Oxford, Manchester University, they were in attendance. And I said, anybody who wants their university to be embraced by this group, please sign up. And I had 26 signatures. And I said, I will schedule a time when these guys can come to your university to perform. And they did very well, 26 gigs. Then they came to my flat by surprise. Brinsley Ford, there's another guy called Angus Gay, who was a drummer. We used to call him Drummy, Zeb, and Tony Robinson. They came to my flat. Says, man, you've got us 26 gigs. Who would like you to be our manager?
Just like that.
Just like that. Yeah, they'd actually, because Aswad was just 3 people, but they used to use a band called Rough Cut to back them. You know, the horns and the keyboards and all that were from another group. They'll just give them tapes to rehearse to, and those 3 people would do the front, what we call front of the house performances. And it became a big band. In the end, it was 18 people. Wow. That's right. So I said, but this is not the whole band. There's only 3 of you. He says, that's Aswad. Wow. The 3 of us. When we want to do concerts, we hire the Rough Cut band. I said, oh, I understand now. So I started to learn quite a few things. They did a song which was a hit. What's it called again? Don't Turn Around.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. What a beautiful song.
It was through my persuasion that I said the vocals should go to Angus Gay, the drummer. And of course...
Don't Turn Around. I remember it.
That's right.
I remember it.
And Brinsley wasn't happy about that because he was the lead singer. And I said, well, for as long as we get the money, this will be a good formula. Because Angus, to me, had the best voice in the band. It's just like Bob Marley and the Wailers.
And then Frontline Kids?
The Frontline
Classic
Kids.
Crew?
That was now in Zimbabwe. When I had come back. I actually went on a talent search looking for kids who could play musical instruments, who wanted to form a group. So there was this group in Zimbabwe, a chap called Peter Tembo was trying to emulate Oliver Mtukudzi and singing like him. Unfortunately, he's late now. But I saw this group and I said, this will be impressive. We were doing Independence Anniversary in Rufaro Stadium, and I had organized that. Thomas Bapfumo was on stage, Oliver Mtukudzi was on stage, and this young man called Bob Manuere comes to me. He says, he would like to sing too. I said, no, you don't just pop in. This thing was arranged for 6 weeks in advance. We don't just come and say, but we just want to showcase what we can do. So they persuaded me, and I said, okay, do something. Then they came on the show, and they did quite well. I can't remember what song they sang, and they were impressive. I said, I'd like to visit you in Zwarasekwa. So the following week, I went there and heard them rehearsing on tin drums. And they had box guitars, what do you call acoustic guitars. And they didn't have proper equipment. I said, I'll try and get you some equipment so that we hear you perform. And then from then onwards, they again decided
You'd
I'll
manage
be there,
them.
manage them, you know.
So you stumbled into this thing.
That's right.
And you ended up becoming good at it.
Well, that's how sometimes things work out. And the only band I said I could have said I applied myself as manager was Transit Crew. Because Munya Brown, who had come all the way from England with Misty and Roots, got married.
Misty and Roots,
That's
Munya
right.
Brown. Those were the good old days,
Good
man.
old days, yes. And he married his local Zimbabwean girl,
Yes.
yes. So he decided to come back to Zimbabwe. And he first of all joined the Ilanga group, and he didn't like the kind of music they were doing. He wanted reggae music only. And Ilanga said, no, we can't be restricted to reggae. So he left them and said, Fred, let's form a band in Zimbabwe with musicians that can play reggae. And Samaita Zindi, who is my cousin, had just come back from England with me. And I said, Samaita, here's an opportunity for you to become a reggae artist, which is what you wanted. They had formed a group called Novismos, no visual means of support. That's what they call themselves. With a guy from Arcadia, can't remember his name. So they were trying to do reggae music in Zimbabwe. I said, here's an opportunity for you to join Munya Brown from Misty and Roots. So he went there, and we called Munya Nyemba to play the bass, and a guy called Anthony Liba, Tony Liba, to play the keyboards. And that was a band. Then we found a young man called Culture T, Tendai Gamure, to join in this group. And he became part of the group. And a Transit Crew was formed.
Wow.
And I became their manager.
Tell me, in your experience, what are the ingredients of a successful manager?
Well, first of all, you must like the music that you are playing with a band. You can't just be a manager of a band without passion for that kind of music. So the genre was important, first of all. Then, of course, to know the people you are dealing with and their personalities, their characters, characteristics, so that you know how to deal with each individual. And then ability to find them, to network and find them the appropriate gigs is also an ingredient. And just your ability to speak to other people and bring about a change in the group, if you want to call it change. And that is basically what it was all about.
But musicians are not easy to work with, am I right?
They are very difficult because of the three-lettered word, ego. There's a case at the moment of Mbuya Stella Chiweshe complaining to Mono Mkundu's son, who came out with a lead guitar and tried to outpace her. And she didn't like it because her ego wouldn't allow that to be outpaced by just a guitarist. So even within the band, there are clashes, you know.
And you've got to manage all that.
That's
the
right.
egos and
That's right, yes.
temperament and
Temperament, and there's a musical term called timbre, T-I-M-B-R-E, which is ability to separate the sounds and keep levels at a particular level, so that there's no clash, even within the band, of each musician's instrument. And that is a very difficult thing to do. And I think that's how Mona Mkundu left Oliver Mtukudzi's band, because according to Oliver, he wanted to show himself that, you know, he could play the guitar. And Oliver is also trying to show that he can sing.
And there's a clash.
There's a clash. And of course, Oliver was more powerful. He sacked the whole band and found another band. You know, that kind of thing. So it's very difficult. And as manager, you got to understand all these differences and chat with these musicians and say, let's be professional, let's be disciplined. You don't just up your volume just because you want to be heard alone. You still have to include all these people with different sounds as part of your group.
Fascinating.
Understand each other.
I nearly fell off my chair as I was researching when I got to the point where, you know, you got a sound system. And you were in competition with Josh Makawa.
That's right.
Mike Munda,
That's
Peter
right.
Jones,
That's
Fungai
right.
Marange.
Yes.
It took me back, and I was saying to myself, how did you, who came up tops as far as the sound system business was concerned? Did you manage to hold your own?
Mike Mundwa and I were just the reggae DJs in the country at the time. So we, although I said competition, there was no competition really, because they knew us, especially in the ghettos, in Mufakose and all that. I remember in particular one situation in Mufakose where the guys wouldn't let us go. They just wanted us to play all night. And the whole people who owned the revenue wanted us to shut at midnight. And they said, you are not going anywhere. You're going to play until 4 o'clock in the morning. Pungwe, they called it. You know, Mike Mundo had to go with a truck to Mbare to get some boys to beat these guys up.
Wow.
You know, he says, you know, we are supposed to finish at 12 o'clock. The posters read 8 to 12. So you must follow that. And they said, no, you're not going. And they stopped us getting the equipment out of the hall until he got these guys from Mbare to deal with them. I remember that incident very well, because they just loved what we were doing.
What a life.
That's right.
Fred, what a life. And you've also been a DJ on ZFM and Radio 3. Am I right that the life of a DJ is a very glamorous life? Is that your experience?
It is. You know, we used to get lots of phone calls from all over the place. And yes, there's glamour involved.
There's glamour involved. Is there money involved?
Not really.
Not really.
I remember one night for $30, I traveled all the way from Chinhoyi to do my radio session from 8 to 9, just 1 hour. And I got $30 for that incident. And when I went back to Chinhoyi that evening, the people were standing outside.
Waiting for you.
That's right. So we're not going in until he comes, because we heard him on the radio. We heard him on the radio, he's not coming. That's what they were thinking. And at 10 o'clock I was there. And they said, now we can go in and pay, you know, which is part of that glamour, as you say, you know.
And I suppose the benefits come from the exposure you get.
That's
and
right.
the gigs that come out of that.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Spin-offs.
Interesting. And the other thing that you've done, Fred, is being a music promoter. Interestingly, I mean, you're a man with a good reputation, but music promotion tends to attract some funny characters. But we'll get to that. So you did promotion for, again, Aswad, King Sounds, John Chibadura, The Real Sounds, Thomas Mafumo, Love Moma Jaivana, the big names. Tell me about that part of your life.
That's right.
Music promotion.
I was promoting local musicians to go, especially to the UK and the Netherlands. And at the same time, I brought UK groups like Aswad, which I managed in England. In fact, Aswad followed me to
Zimbabwe.
That's right. And King Sounds, who was on the bandwagon, he just followed Aswad as well. So we did concerts here in Zimbabwe. Didn't go down very well because we didn't have a proper PA system at the time. We hired from South Africa, and it was delayed at the border. On the day of the concert, we had hustles running to Baitbridge
To collect the sound system.
And the guys, it was Pro Sounds in South Africa, who hired the PA system out, took advantage of a deal they'd done with Rima Bible Church in Zimbabwe, where they sent extra equipment so that some of it will remain
In Zimbabwe.
So we had hassles on returning the equipment. Unfortunately, or fortunately, they didn't know what Eliminator B was, Eliminator C was. Those were all speakers. And the customs people just ticked and ticked and ticked, and they said all the equipment is back. But we knew that some of the equipment had been left behind in Zimbabwe. And it's got a lot of shady people. We discovered afterwards, one of them was actually a customs officer who was a member of this Rhema Bible Church, who actually took or stole some of the equipment that came from South Africa. And we paid heavily for that. And the customs duty was also heavy, just for hiring it for 2 weekends.
So talk to me about these shady characters. I mean, there's a lot of these people. You read about stories, musicians have been, defrauded. The public has paid, they've been defrauded. Why do we tend to have, this industry tends to attract those kind of people?
It's what we call fly-by-night promoters.
Okay.
And they're just out there to make
a quick buck. And they don't care about what happens, the chaos that happens within the thing. But it can be professionally organized to the extent that people will understand that, when you are dealing with musicians, it's just like an industry. Any professional way. And sometimes you don't get such people because somebody just thinks I can make money by using these guys and then run. And that's what happens in most cases. We had a guy called JJ Chavunduka. Right. Bulawayo
guy. He would go to South Africa and get the Yvonne Shaka Shakas, Brenda Fassis and all that. And in the end, when we tried to bring these guys, Juluka, to Zimbabwe, they'd heard of JJ Promotions. He says, if you're coming from JJ Promotions, we don't want to deal with you.
Why?
Because he just comes and says, I'll pay you guys so much money. And when you come and done the concert, he's done with you.
It disappears.
It disappears. So he had such a reputation at the particular time, to the extent that they thought that anybody who's coming from Zimbabwe
was JJ Promotions. Or behaved like JJ
That's
Promotions.
Right, yes. And they had difficulties coming here. I brought not Yvonne Shaka Shaka, Brenda Fassi to Zimbabwe. And she didn't do a concert. When she did the song Vulingela, and I said, you're going to perform at the National Sports Stadium. In the end, she went and performed there without the promoters because nothing was properly arranged. And the whole band stayed at my house because there was no accommodation.
No hotel or anything of that sort.
Booked and all that. And we just bought them a crate of beer so that they could drink all night. But they're very disappointed. As I'm talking right now, she's late now, but I'm owed something like 8,000 rands by the group because Chico Twala was now their manager.
Yeah.
And they rang up Chico and said, nothing is happening here, but we have borrowed $8,000 from Fred Zindi. Could you make sure that he gets his money back? And Chico said to me over the phone, he'll do that. I didn't get that 8,000 rands. I followed him to Johannesburg. Chico didn't have the 8,000 rands to give to me. Instead, he started to introduce me to Zinzi Mandela and Winnie Mandela and all that. Mama,
Yeah.
I've got this guy from Zimbabwe. Would you like to meet him? And I don't know why he was doing that. He took me around with, in his car, to all these places. And I met a guy called Peter Tladi. He's a jazz artist who is still a good friend up to now, who said, forget about your money, my friend. You've lost
You're
it.
never going to get it.
This is it.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
right.
Wow.
You know, that kind of thing.
Your,
That's
your,
music promotion.
You then pursued your music teaching, having gone to teach yourself.
That's right.
Music at the Piccadilly Center. You took your passion to the Zimbabwe College of Music.
That's right.
And you've stayed, with the Zimbabwe College of Music. You are now actually chairman of the College of Music. That's just more than a passion, that's a calling. Talk to me about that.
That's right. No, in 2000, when Ben Zulu,
Yes.
who was chairman of the college.
May his spirit rest
Yes,
in peace.
That's right. When Ben Zulu decided he'll stop being chairman of that college because he had other passions that follow. He was now into filmmaking. He came to my house and we spoke about it, and he says, I think you should be the chairman of the college and take over from me. We had a guy called Neil Chapman, who was the director then at the College of Music. And he introduced me to all the members there. I was actually teaching at the college, teaching music. He introduced me to everybody else, the board and everything. And he says, I'm introducing you to a new chairman of the board. There was Bill Saidi at the time, Ephraim Chamba, Jean Miklem, and a few white guys. So they accepted me and embraced me as their chairman from 2000 until 2008, when things became tough economically. But we had over $1 million in a bank account in the Isle of Wight.
Wow.
And I said, why should we keep it outside there? Let's bring it to Zimbabwe. Big mistake, you know. And fortunately, we kept our $1 million. But in 2008, that's when foreign bank accounts were being raided. And I made the decision to actually open the account closer to home in Botswana. And I don't know what has happened now because I've left chairmanship.
Okay.
But the money should still be in Botswana. And that's one thing I did. We also did, because of my passion for academic affairs, I also did introduce the degree program at the Zimbabwe College of Music, which is still going on with associateship with Africa University. And it's still going on up to now.
The $1 million that you was that earned through rights? Explain that.
We did quite a few things. We sold what was known as the Kochold. Mrs. Kochold is the founding member of the Rhodesian College of Music, which turned to Zimbabwe College of Music.
Yeah.
And we had Kochold letters, which we sold, auctioned them off, and got about $250,000. And we also got money from CEDA, which was meant for equipment and the improvement of the college, another $500,000. And through tuition fees and all that, piano teaching and all that, we raised about $1 million in the end.
And one thing that you've done is also write books on music, and
right.
you brought some of them here. You've actually written 7 books on music.
7 music.
Wow.
Books. Yeah.
Fascinating. Which ones are your favorite,
Well,
Fred?
the latest is always the favorite. This one, because it's an improvement from the previous ones. Music Rocking Zimbabwe, which basically looking at the artists in Zimbabwe, from, as you can see from the cover,
Yeah.
Mukadota,
Thomas Mapfumo.
Thomas Mapfumo,
Andy Brown.
Oliver Mtukudzi, Andy Brown,
Love Moma Jaivana.
Love Mama Jaivana. That's right. And those were my favorite artists, and we thought we would feature them in the book, and several others.
What's your favorite music, and who's your all-time favorite musician?
I've been asked that question several times.
Tell
And
me
I
now.
said, all of them are my favorite musicians, because
Right.
people are trying to
Box
me into a genre.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that, because I listen to all sorts of music.
All sorts of music. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And the one thing that as I was reading, I'm like, wow, what a life! You know, you gotten into amazing friendships with powerful people like Sir Richard. Sir Paul McCartney,
That's
Sir
right.
Richard Cliff,
That's right.
David Bowie, Fred McGregor, and Elton John.
That's right.
I mean, that's an amazing pack.
That's right. I think it's basically because of my stay in England and my passion for music. I used to love this thing. When the Bundu Boys came to the UK, most of them stayed with me, because at
The
first
Bundu Boys. I mean, wow.
the first concerts were a disaster. They didn't make enough money. In fact, I remember the first night they only made 50 pounds.
Sure.
After a show at Africa Centre in England. And they didn't have anywhere to sleep. And I had a 2-bedroom flat. And I said, "Corey, come over and stay at my flat." So we became very close friends with David Mankaba, who was a bass guitarist. Biggie Tembo refused to stay in my flat. He insists on staying in a bed and breakfast. And the 50 pounds went all to Biggie Tembo that they made on the same night. But Ken Chacha, who was the drummer, and Rise Kagona stayed in my flat with David Mankaba. So we became very attached to each other. We became very good friends. So when David Mankaba fell sick, he went into a hospital in London. And who came to see him? Sir Cliff Richard. That's the first time I met Sir Cliff Richard in person. And he says, "Can you persuade him to go in Zimbabwe and talk about AIDS? And he should actually own up that, you know, is dying from AIDS." And well, I spoke to David, and he said he'll think about it. And he eventually went to Zimbabwe and died in Zimbabwe. That's right.
Wow. Wow. Talk to me now. I mean, a lot of people would want to know, Fred Zindi, where were you born? Which schools did you attend?
I was actually born in Mutare, in Sakuba. And I attended Mutanda Government School and Sakuba Secondary School before leaving for the UK.
So you left for the UK having done A-levels at...
O levels.
O levels.
I did my A-levels in London.
London. Okay. And your upbringing, would you consider it privileged, or it was a struggling life?
It was a struggling life.
Talk to me about it.
Yes. I was brought up by a father who was a newspaper vendor. You know, he worked for Kingston's. Kingston's is a publications company, Manica Post. And he started off as a newspaper vendor. He was promoted to a labels, what do you call it? Labels officer. And his basic job was just to stamp
newspapers as they were being dispatched.
That's right. And then I became a newspaper vendor myself. He would give me a job every Friday after school to go and sell the Manica Post in Mutare. And I established quite a few customers who now knew me as that newspaper boy. It was very good.
Humble beginnings, Fred.
That's right, yes. And we lived 3 houses apart from Jethro Shasha. And our love for music was put together, impressed by this newspaper selling, because I asked Jethro to come and help me sell newspapers every Friday. And we used to get quite good pocket money
From selling newspapers.
And from then onwards, after school, we decided, no, this is enough. We should now get serious with music. And we got a contract to perform at the Crocodile Motel in Rusape. So every Friday night, we would leave. A guy called Mr. Hall, as a colored guy called Mr. Hall, would come and pick up us in Mutare, and we would go to Rusape and spend the weekend there. Friday night, Saturday afternoons, and Saturday evenings, performing at the Crocodile Motel. And then on Sunday, we'd go back to Mutare. Monday, we are back in school. That's right. This is
Music and school. That's
right.
been your life.
That's
been
right.
your life, Fred.
That's
You are
right.
you are now a full professor.
That's right.
And an education psychologist.
That's right.
What's your area of interest within education psychologists and the professorship? What do you lecture, research in?
Psychometrics is about intelligence. We do all human traits. Psycho means psychology. Metrics is measurement. We measure intelligence and other personality traits such as attitude, aptitude, personality self, interests, people's interests. All those are my areas of research. That's right.
And you've written, in this area, you've written 10 books and 70 refereed journal articles
right.
on education and some other scholarly writings.
That's right.
Amazing life, Fred, I keep
That's
on
right.
saying.
To become a professor, you have to have at least 35 refereed journal articles. And I did that, when was that? By 1997, I'd done that. So it's an ongoing process.
And you still find time to do music.
That's
I mean, I can't say that enough. Just how impressed I am, just how overwhelmed I'm by that.
Thank
The
you.
discipline.
Thank you.
How many hours do you sleep?
6 hours at the most.
Not bad.
You know, I go to bed around midnight and I'm up at 6.
Not bad.
Yes.
Bad.
So,
And looking at, I remember you when I was a student at the University of Zimbabwe, back then. When you look at the university now, you've been there for quite a long time.
that's right.
What goes through your mind in terms of the state that it is in right now?
Yeah. I've seen all the processes going through from the 1980s up to now, and we've seen the changes that come to bear at the University of Zimbabwe. And I don't want to say it's good or better or it's worse, but it's an ongoing process, as I say. And the University of Zimbabwe has transformed. In fact, at the time I started, we used to have very few privileged black students. It was like 60% white in terms of students enrollment. Then come early 90s, it became rural Zimbabwean folk with good grades coming in. And that changed. My son, who had gone to St. George's College, didn't want to come to the University of Zimbabwe. And I said, look, you must come to the University of Zimbabwe because I don't have to pay fees. And I work there. He wanted to do law. He says, no ways. Dad, no, I'm not going to go there. Why? because there's nobody like me there from St. George's College. You know, I had to fork out 60,000 rands every term for him to go at UCT, University of Cape Town, because he did see people who he thought were privileged like him going to the University of Zimbabwe. Today, if you come to the University of Zimbabwe, you see young students all driving cars. They've changed again. Even people from St. George's College are going to the University of Zimbabwe now. So the economic trends of the country change the perceptions as well. And I think that basically this is what is happening.
And if there was one thing that you would recommend be done to change the state of our education sector, what would that be?
That would be a very difficult thing to do. But basically, what I think should be done to change the education sector in this country is to see the innovation that is coming in scientific upbringing of the students. There should be more scientific rather than reading theories and doing nothing about them. They should actually be innovative to the extent that they can actually create their own visions in life. And we have not come to that stage yet. We are actually just imitating mainly the British system of life and British education system, and instead of transposing it to Zimbabwean conditions, it's difficult.
Because science and technology are key for industrial development. Do you get a sense that we pay enough attention to science and technology?
We do.
Math, science and technology?
We do, but it's all bookish stuff that we are concentrating on. Yes, I got 3 A levels, and I've got mathematics, biology, and chemistry, and that's well done, my son. But what do you do with those things? Is what to do with those things that matters. In Japan, they learn these things, same as we do, but they go out of their way to see how innovative they can be with those things. And that's where we are lacking, or we are lagging behind.
You are also an award-winning journalist, Fred.
Thanks to the Standard.
What's been the experience like? You know, being published in newspapers. You've done so, I think, for the Herald too. Hey?
That's right. Yes, yes. I just love writing, and writing is my passion. And I don't know who picked, because I did not enter that contest, but somebody must have discovered that this man loves to write, and decided to compare me with others. And they decided I'm an outstanding journalist in that way. And I was actually invited to get the award. And I was pleased to be recognized in that regard.
Wow. What a life, Fred, that you've lived. I mean, it's basically, you've given so much to Zimbabwe. And we're grateful for what you have given to the nation. We love books on this show, yes. And to have you having written 7 books on music, 10 books in your field as professor education, and
there's one which is coming out this month.
Right.
It's called Guidance and Counseling in Action, and it's an academic book. And it's already got orders from GZU, Great Zimbabwe University, and from Africa University. So I'm happy to know that I'm doing something which students will benefit from.
Absolutely, absolutely. Outside of these books that you've written, are there books, if we could turn to books now, are there books that you have read, Fred, that have impacted your life in a huge way that you'd want to recommend to our book-loving audience?
Yes, I love to read quite a bit. In fact, that's what gives me the passion for writing. And the latest book I was reading is Barack Obama's book. I've just finished reading Michelle Obama's Becoming Michelle. And apart from that, I've read Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and she's a very brilliant writer.
Which is your favorite from Chimamanda?
Half a Yellow Sun.
Half a Yellow Sun.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I just love the way she puts words together. She's very good.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And each time I read, I'm saying, this is an African woman just like me. Why don't I put my words just like in the same way that she does? You know, what background has she got? I study their backgrounds too.
Yeah.
And I say, what is it that she has done differently from me, apart from just living in Nigeria? And I don't see any difference. And I'm saying one day I'm going to be able to do the same thing and put words into the way she does and sell 1 million copies.
Is that your next big thing for Fred?
No, it's an ambition. It's an ambition.
Fred, thank you so much. Like I said, when you agreed to come on the show, I was so delighted because you represent precisely the reason why we started this conversation.
That's right.
You have so much to share with this country. You've done so much, and I have no doubt that a lot of people are going to get so much. You're going to take people on a journey back as far as our music is concerned, but also, you know, what an inspiration with the writing of books that you've done both in music and in academia. So Fred, thank you so much for creating the time to join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you. Allow me to tend to our viewers who are in Zimbabwe, on the continent and all over the world who watch this show. We are on YouTube, 7 a.m. Central African time every Monday morning. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, I invite you to click onto this red button, and if you do, you'll get an alert Monday morning. So until next time, cheers to you all.